Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are watching this. This is Sam Prentice Makes Things Happen. I'm Sam Prentice back once again making it happen, and today we are looking at the Anycubic Vyper. Ta-da, here it is. And we're also going to be looking at the similarities between that printer and the CR6 SE. I'm also going to be looking at the BIQU BX. And again, that was a Kickstarter. The CR6 was a Kickstarter. The Anycubic Vyper is not a Kickstarter, but I'm seeing a lot of content online that people are saying, hey, they're pretty much the same printer, and I'm going to tell you if it is or if it is not. So stay tuned. Let's get straight on into it. So I was going to start off with an unboxing setup video, however, due to my agreement with Anycubic, we decided to wait until launch day, which is the 10th of June. Hooray, that might be today. Before releasing some of my videos. My usual format, of course, is unboxing, setup and performing the first print live. This, of course, was mainly down to ease and time saving. However, as I was coming to the end of my setup, the power went on and there was an issue. The issue was soon solved thanks to Anycubic's engineers that one of the Z sensors on the homing had been pinched during manufacturing process. This was a super easy fix and hooray for me, but the adverse effects of the cable pinch meant that the display screen just showed the Anycubic logo and didn't go any further into the setup. After thinking it could be a firmware issue, we tried a bunch of things before unplugging the board plugs one by one, and then we got that sucker to work. So while I was poking around inside the case, I did notice that the motherboard looked very, very similar to other motherboards that I'd seen on the CR6. So let's have a look at these and see the comparisons. So on the left hand side we have the Creality version 0.0.6, which is the Anycubic board for the Anycubic Vyper. And yeah, I guess there are some similarities between the two, but to be honest, they're not so similar that I would perhaps count it as being a full clone. It is very much their own board, especially when you consider that Big Tree Tech did a very similar thing and basically cloned the CR6 board, which is shown here. So running through the board itself, you've got Z right, you've got the Z left, and then the third one in is another Z, which is Z left. Then you've got your Y. The X is actually built into the plug on the right, along with your hot end plugs, fans, LED, thermistor, and probe. Your thermistor and fans are down the bottom. Your Z end stops left and right are just above the LCD as well, and obviously your power and everything goes into the left-hand corner there. Large SD slot, the old school printer style cable USB as well, and that's pretty much it for that particular board that's used. On the right hand side you do have a Wi-Fi module, but at the moment this is not used. So let's get the printers together and see if size definitely does or does not matter. So using this thumbnail, let's talk trends. The trends, of course, being 32-bit boards with silent steppers, E3D hardware, BondTech clone equipment, copies of SliceEngineering hot ends, touchscreens, big SD cards, LED lights with some sort of USP. And while I think Kickstarter certainly has its place within the 3D printing world, if you're desperate to get a new printer, wait for the thing to come out. Don't back it on Kickstarter. It will come out eventually. Trust me. So let's talk about Kickstarter for a second. Just remember that the money you give to these people is not guaranteed that you're ever going to get a product at the end of it. It really leaves a sour taste in people's mouths when things don't go to plan, especially when you're a big company like Creality or Big Tree Tech and you're putting these things out to the market and people believe in your product and you let them down. And let's be fair, the CR6 was a massive, massive problem. Along with the BIQU BX inside a pandemic, you've really got to be asking yourselves at the end of this, who's going to help you when you need it most? And that will come down to two contributing factors. Number one, is the support from the manufacturer actually going to be any good? What are people saying online? Is there a community there? And certainly if you're part of the big community like the BQ BX, Luke Harrison's doing a hell of a lot of work with those guys at the moment in order to get your printer up and working to a really, really great standard where Big Tree Tech, BQ BX aren't doing anything. They seemingly don't seem to be doing a single thing, and it's all on Luke's shoulders. The same goes for the CR6 with Sebastian's community firmware. He is the man that's bearing down all this information. You know, he is unbelievable with the kind of stuff that he's managed to come out with, and he's such a humble guy as well. Let's get back on topic, especially with the Vyper versus the CR6. Now, unbeknownst to me, the dual driver that's here is a see-through driver. And I didn't realise at the time, but I had also installed this on the CR6, a similar one, which is a BMG clone. I do find that the CR6 looks a bit mundane versus the Vyper. The Vyper kind of has a certain way about it that makes it look a little bit better than the CR6. It has this kind of finesse to it, I guess. Maybe that's the plastic coatings, I don't know, but it just seems to be looking like a better printer to me. Now, they do have two different beds on them. This is the PIE bed on the Vyper, and we have the glass bed, which is on the Creality. You do, of course, get a different finish on the PIE versus the glass bed, and it's kind of like a pitting kind of effect, but it really grips to the bed. And the displays on these things, you know, like I say, the Viper certainly looks better. Both of these come with these little storage trays as well. Let's move around the back. Both have strain relief on the beds, of course. And the setup is pretty generic, very, very similar to each other. And even the spool holders are pretty much identical. And there's a different shot there. There's a filament runout sensor there as well. Very well made. I like the fact that you can see through this. And obviously that's the BMG that I installed on that as well. People that are looking for quality and differences between these two things will notice that the Z on the Creality has a sync belt, which I do rate quite heavily. This will not work on the Viper due to the way that it's configured, as you've got Z left and Z right. And you've obviously got two end stops on that. On the Creality you only have one, of course, which is why the bed works the way that it works. It is similar on the Viper, but the setup is certainly different. So since I have all these free printers, I thought I'd have a look at the BIQU BX as well. This is a 250 by 250 by 250 print bed, which actually is the largest one, apart from the Z on the Viper. This retailed at $309 up to $599. It had a direct drive extruder on it as well. And the fact that BIQU BX and the Big Tree Tech team made this, I was really impressed with it. It's got a metal bed that works really, really well. Unless you're printing something large, of course, then it lifts up the corners. But again, all three printers are incredibly capable, and I think this is where people are getting a little bit confused and a little bit uppity. You know, the CR6 is 235 by 235 by 250, and of course the Viper is 245 by 245 by 260. So at this point it's going to be very much down to personal choice. Okay, so let's look at some of the positives and negatives about this printer that I've experienced so far. Number one, I did have a problem with the extruder. The grub screw had come loose, but fortunately because I could see through it, I could tighten that up, and that was just easy fix. It wasn't a blocked nozzle or anything like that. I didn't need to take anything to bits. Very, very easy. I did have the cable that had the pinched Z on the home, so that didn't allow for the unit to actually boot up. It just gave me that white Anycubic display. I do get a bit of what they call elephant's foot on the print, and that was down to a tuning thing. So again, I've now loaded octoprint on it. I've done a full PID tune, I've done some E-steps, I've done all that kind of stuff as well, so that's worked out really, really well. You do get like a pebbled finish on the PIE print bed, so if you're used to printing on glass and getting that really good shiny effect to a print, then you might not like the PIE, but there's nothing stopping you basically changing out that for glass, because the way that this homes and the way that it pressure senses is all done on the nozzle as per usual. Positive is it is a good looking machine, and it's not a kickstarting machine. So if you want to buy this thing, and I believe that today there's 3,000 units coming out at $299, do it, just get it. It's awesome. The PIE bed is actually very, very good, despite the fact that you do get that kind of pebbled effect on it. The only big downfall for me, and it is a major downfall in my opinion, is the current firmware is lacking, especially when you compare it to something like the CR6 with the community firmware. So configuring your E-steps, seeing your bed leveling configuration, all the stuff that Sebastian has put into that particular printer, you kind of miss it when it's not there. So yeah, sure, you can whack an SD card in it and it will print. But there are a few things like tuning retraction, linear advance, onboard PID tuning, E-step calibration, mesh leveling display, TMC settings and tuning that it doesn't have. And that's not the worst thing in the world, but I would and do appreciate the fact that this information could be put onto that, and you know, it would certainly encourage I'd certainly encourage Anycubic to look into this to make this printer a better printer overall. But having said that, we've been here before, certainly with the CR6, so no doubt there's going to be people looking at this printer very, very soon, and I imagine there'll be a community firmware that will come out for this machine too. I did also take the liberty of buying a CR6 SE Big Tree Tech board today, and this is the Tri-Gorilla board as well. As you can see, they are very much different sizes. There are some similarities between the two boards, but that's like saying any board is very similar to anything else. The other thing I did see on the internet today, which kind of made me smile, was the comparison between the Ender 3 V2 and this machine. Now, there's nothing similar about these things at all. Like, honestly, there's nothing similar. I guess it's more similar to the CR6 than it ever would be to the V2. And, you know, it's the different size, it's a different board, it hasn't got a touch screen, it hasn't got auto bed leveling, it's a single Z. forget about it. If you think these are two of the same machines, you're a million miles away from this. Absolutely 100%. So is it a good machine? Yes, 100%. It is a very, very good machine. The print quality is exceptional. I've been really, really impressed with this, and you know, it certainly has my seal of approval. Quality-wise, once tuned, this is going to be an exceptional machine to add to anyone who is looking at getting to 3D printing for the very first time. I think the community is also going to be very, very influential in this, and Anycubic are listening, and that's kind of unique to any brand and any company at the moment, that they are listening. That's answered the big question: is this thing a clone? I would say not. I think it's got some similarities to other machines that are in the marketplace, but this is very much its own machine. And you know, you only need to look at things like the Z's, the way that the board is configured, how the board works, and even talking with Sebastian, there are some kind of clone elements to all these things now. But ultimately, it's a great machine. It prints incredibly well, and it's certainly a machine that I'm going to be keeping in my my arsenal of 3D printers here. So we will see you next time. Hopefully this video has maybe helped you out or convinced you that this is the best printer or better printer for you. If it has, hit me up with a comment, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and we will see you next time.